Richard Drax.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What on earth is happening to our country, Madam Deputy Speaker? Muzzled, acquiescent and fearful. Having fought and defeated one Project Fear, I never thought we'd experience another. Sadly, unlike the first, the polls would suggest that the majority of the population has succumbed to the second. Armed with this information, the decision-makers feel they can creep out with their shovels and move the goalposts at will. Personally, I'm not surprised the nation's been beaten into submission when day after day, hour after hour, we are deluged with dire warnings of doom and gloom by government advisers of one kind or another. A section of the press and media must take responsibility for their role in creating this near Orwellian nightmare. Don't get me wrong, I have never underestimated the threat this pandemic poses. Every death and illness is deeply regrettable. But surely there comes a time when, for the greater good of the majority, a sense of proportion must be adopted. This is not easy to do when graphs and statistics are presented to support this 1 month extension, despite those far better qualified than I who question their methodology, presentation, and even accuracy. So much that was predicted has not come to pass, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the so-called third wave is not killing or hospitalising anywhere near the numbers affected in wave 1 or 2. Why? Well, it's due to this remarkable vaccine rollout, for which the government, the front bench, the NHS must take huge credit. From the initial promise of regaining our freedom when the vulnerable have been inoculated, I can understand the government's reluctance to give it back. First, it's easier to say no. And second, let's not forget, there's a public inquiry hanging over the government like the sword of Damocles. The revelations from Dominic Cummings and the accusations that followed them were no doubt a sobering taster to ministers of what is to come. However, fearing an inquiry and variance are not reasons for delaying Freedom Day. Mistakes have been made. That was inevitable given the unprecedented nature of this pandemic. But that does not mean being risk-averse now. We desperately need a confident government to take a proportionate stand in the face of the evidence. For months, the government's cry was, protect the NHS. On Tuesday, the organisation's chief executive said that only 1% of hospital beds were occupied by patients. We know that emissions are rising in the northwest, but not on the scale seen in the second wave. Yes, totally unlocking is a risk, but it's a proportionate one when considering the appalling damage being done to the risk takers, those who create our prosperity and jobs, and the continuing and successful rollout of the vaccines. And as for this place, I've been here long enough to know that when there's agreement across the majority of the House, something is fundamentally wrong.